One of the things that that you notice in Irish fiction is the way in which people seem to put a flag up over a place. And that place is not Ireland, but a very specific place within Ireland. And I've been teaching this semester a novel by Mariah Edgeworth, who's a sort of shadow figure in this book. And Mariah Edgeworth wrote her famous novel Castle Rackrent, which was a novel much admired by figures like Walter Scott and Jane Austen in the last years of the 18th century. And she is, as far as I can work out, correct me if I'm wrong, she's the only novelist from Longford, other than you. In other words, 200 years went by. Sorry, is that 200? Am I getting 18? Yeah, 200. God, it's a long lot of years before anyone in Longford thought of writing another novel. And you know, there's you and there's her, and so that actually, there's a beautiful phrase by an Irish painter, Patrick Collins, when he was talking about the idea of Irish light and how to paint Irish light, and saying that, of course, as a painter in the late 20th century in Ireland, Irish light was an unmuddied stream. No one had been to it before you. You didn't have to worry about how Cézanne had done it, or you didn't have to worry about how Fra Angelico dealt with it. There was nothing, and there was you and some paint. And so you were working in a very free way without a tradition. But I wonder how Longford's speech, or getting out of Longford, or that story you're telling, that you had that sense of having no shadow, no shadow at your shoulder, no one else there, that you were working for the first time with this material.
I did feel that, absolutely. I felt there were points, the novel is set between Longford and Dublin, and I'm not sure how it works out in percentages, but it's pretty much half and half. And in both places, but especially when I was writing the scene set in County Longford, there were moments when I felt an almost giddy sort of freedom, and there was the thrill of putting, sometimes I had to take them back out again because I was doing it just for the sake of it, but there was a thrill of putting something like Curry Grand Lake in, or using an idiom like haverhill or idin, which are words that my father uses. Idin especially, nobody seemed to understand what that meant. It's just within, without the W. So you'd say idin in the room, meaning she's inside in the room, she's idin in the room. And sometimes this, this kind of pride and excitement at being able to write fiction that's so grounded in the place you grew up in. Sometimes that can be just a procrastinatory device, that you're actually just enjoying it so much that you're not really pursuing the characters, you're not really pursuing the story that you need to pursue in order to write the novel. So there was a, I couldn't do too much of that, or I couldn't enjoy it too much.
Yeah, but there was another aspect of that too, where, during the years when the Irish economy grew by about something around 10% a year, which was a sort of record, and everyone was talking about us. We thought we were great, and everyone, it was very exciting, really, when you think about it.
Now we're a disgrace.
Yeah, now we're a disgrace. Everyone's sort of more content in an odd sort of way.
Only the immigration officers.
So obviously everyone was saying, especially people like me who tend to write novels set, in any time except the present. Look, right. Why don't you write, why? Where is this novel? Why don't you write a novel set in contemporary Ireland? And I thought, I can't get any view of it. Yeah. But it was when I read Solace, I realised that instead of worrying about it, if you just put the images in, and there's one image particularly, I've mentioned this to you before, that really was something I almost saw. But when I read you doing it, that you go to a party and you're just 1 month out of fashion. So you think it's okay still to bring beer to a party. And so you go with your beer to the party and you bring your beer in and you're trying to put your beer into the fridge. And you realise the fridge is entirely full of champagne, French champagne. Everyone else has brought champagne except you. And that image, I thought, was an absolute clinching image of those years in Dublin when you really had to watch yourself every week because, Armani suddenly became unfashionable with some new designer. Do you know what I mean?
I know, yeah, Paul Murray wrote a lovely piece about the Brown Thomas Christmas windows. Brown Thomas is a big department store in Dublin, and he spoke about how before the boom, the Christmas windows were it was a big, they would be unveiled and you go along to see them. And before the economic boom, they were always full of toys. It was a child, wonderland for children. But as soon as the economic boom happened, it became a sort of wonderland of Helmut Lang and really kind of emaciated, not real people, but emaciated mannequins. Never mind emaciated people, angles and frowns, and all the toys were gone, and it was new toys. And people did, not everybody. There's no point in generalising, but Ireland did become fluent in French champagne, in the language of champagne and designer labels and things that now seem so unnecessary, so alien and unnecessary and strange. And that's a big part of commentary as Ireland looks at itself now and tries to work out what happened. But just to touch on the point that you make about Solace being a novel that's set, it's set at the end of the very beginning, or the beginning of the end in a way, like it ends in late 2008. So that was when it became apparent that this recession really was going to happen. But it's been very interesting in a way in that the book because so much of the book is set in rural Ireland and set on a farm, it has to a certain extent still been read as a novel that's set in the past. There is a conflation of the past and the rural in Ireland, which I find, having come from a farm and now watching how, for example, farming is really the only industry that's doing well in Ireland at all, and people are starting to go back to farms as a way of trying to rebuild the economy. I find it very interesting, and you might imagine pretty irritating, that the agricultural is conflated with the it must be, aren't we finished with all that old rubbish? Didn't Patrick Kavanagh and John McGahern write about farms? Let's move on. And so I have my little spake about that every so often.